thank you very much, Adrian. Appreciate you putting this webinar together for us. And just start off with a very quick agenda for everyone. And before I start, just want to introduce myself. My name is Jeff Lemon. I'm a partner with GoPlan. We're a certified adaptive insights and Blackline solution provider. We've been around for over 2 years, have approximately 50 customers, and I'll cover that in a bit. But just briefly want to go over the agenda today. So today we're going to talk about, which we think is a very unique combination of products. It's a combination of adaptive insights and Blackline. Two products that are what we consider best of breed leaders in the space, and how those affect and can tie to your ERP platform. We'll wrap up with a brief demonstration of both tools, so a demonstration of adaptive insights and a demonstration of Blackline. Now keep in mind that those demonstrations, if we were one-on-one in the same room, could take hours, right? These are very powerful enterprise-class products with a substantial feature set that is difficult to demo in a short period of time. But I do want to take an opportunity to give everyone on the phone a brief overview of those, so you can at least get a flavor for it. If you do have additional questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to me, and I can provide my contact information at the end of the call. All right, so just to start, and I jumped ahead a little bit on this, but GoPlan, like I said before, is a solution provider for adaptive insights and Blackline. And so we take our clients everywhere through the actual initial evaluation of the product, through the implementation, and we also provide all of the ongoing support. And the benefit there is when you're going through an actual sales and evaluation process, you communicate a lot of requirements to the folks that you're working with. And oftentimes, when you then transition over to the service environment, a lot of that information is lost and you have to repeat it over again. With GoPlan, we work very, very tightly all together as a team to make sure those requirements aren't lost. And so it's a very hands-on approach. We do a lot of on-site work, a lot of on-site training with our clients. And we've got probably 50 or so customers, which means we have 50 or so references. So at the end of the call, GoPlan.com, if you want to look at our client list and let us know if you'd like to talk to any of those folks, we're absolutely happy to do so. So I just want to start initially by giving you an idea for the folks on the phone of why we see adaptive insights and Blackline as being two solutions that solve two very distinct problems in an organization, and what they have in common, just to start. So first of all, just to start, as an overview, both of these products are covering what I consider two separate functions in a finance group, or in the office of the CFO, I should say. One is the finance team, so forward-looking, all the extensive reporting, budgeting, planning, but also the accounting team. So everything that you do every month. Sometimes you do it every month, sometimes you cram it in at the end of the quarter, but it's the reconciliation process and the close, right? That's something that really can wipe out your schedule for 2 weeks every month, maybe even more than that every quarter. And that's something that you are likely doing in Excel. That product, the Excel product, we see it everywhere. We see it in accounting teams. We see it in finance teams. No matter how great your ERP is, you always end up back in Excel for specific functions. We also look at both those products as a total collaboration solution across a business. So especially in the planning and budgeting world, we see a lot of central budget planning and folks that are really looking to collaborate outside of the finance group. Doing that in Excel turns into a kind of an exercise in futility. You end up with, we've seen customers that have hundreds of spreadsheets and thousands of workbooks, many of which look almost exactly the same. And they're trying to manage all of those, project manage those over email. It is incredibly challenging to do. We also see both products as a way to do a continual accounting and finance process. So when you're doing these functions in Excel, you're typically cramming them in during a certain time of the year, right? It becomes a monthly, a quarterly, or an annual exercise. Our view on these functions within a business is that they should be done continually. Reconciliations don't necessarily have to wait until the end of the month. Budgets don't have to be done just once a year, because let's face it, after 6 months, a budget isn't necessarily useful, right? That's why it has to be redone continually. And lastly, we like both products, and our customers like both products because they're looking for a certain amount of independence from their internal IT group. They don't want to be in a situation where they need a report, they need to launch the tool, they need to put it on someone's desktop, and they have to open a case and wait for someone to actually configure it. We are more on the side of providing more nimble solutions that are controlled by the actual business user, and these products both enable us to offer that. So just to start, when I look at ERP systems, they accomplish obviously a substantial amount in your business, and they're really the core. They're really the core of any organization, right? It's your general ledger. It's any of your AR, AP functionality. It's order management, possibly payroll. Sometimes that's within the ERP. Sometimes customer management and distribution management is within the ERP. So it's all functions that are needed to actually run the business, right? So a lot of times when customers buy an ERP, they come to us a couple years later and they say, we bought this phenomenal ERP package. We thought it was going to be able to do everything under the sun, but we're still doing a whole lot of stuff in Excel. And that is a very normal response. We see that all the time. And our view on that is if you're looking for a total closed loop financial close solution, it's not going to happen with just an ERP. You're always going to be in Excel. And it really doesn't matter what ERP you have. We have customers on everything from tier 1 large ERPs all the way down to ERPs that nobody has ever heard of that are doing these same functions within the system and still using Excel. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other functions in our organization that we see. So budgeting, forecasting, and reporting, something that everybody does, or if they're not doing it, they really should, all done in Excel typically. The majority of the customers that come with this are still doing this in Excel. And this is mainly due to the fact that the ERP might have a budgeting function, but it's typically just one page where you type in your budget. And that's not really what we consider a budgeting process. What about board reporting? What about the actual reconciliation process? The majority of our customers are reconciling their accounts every month in Excel by practically eyeballing them from spreadsheet to spreadsheet. Incredibly difficult to do. And lastly, what about audit? What about matching any various transactions in the organization that you're doing manually today and the actual close and the task management behind the close, also done manually? So if you think about the 3 tiers of a business, right? If you want to talk about kind of an end-to-end solution, you want to talk about the 3 tiers. You have your ERP. That's essentially where you start. But you're finishing right now in Excel. Our view on this is that using Blackline, you can speed the amount of time it actually takes to close your books, generate completed actuals, and then roll those into Adaptive right away, very quickly, to then finalize your reporting and continually reforecast. So when you put those 3 solutions together, you've cut out a massive amount of manual work. The typical Adaptive Insights customer, before they come to Adaptive, is spending over 50% of their time in what we consider tactical and transactional functions. And what I mean by that is the old Control-C, Control-V lifestyle, where you're taking content from one spreadsheet, put it on another, and you spend half your time trying to copy and paste things together and make sure they tie out. Same thing in Blackline. Customers are exporting details out of their, for example, let's say it's out of their bank, and reconciling that with whatever is in their general ledger. Not always an automated process, and even if it is somewhat automated, it only gets a minority of the accounts for reconciliation, and the process becomes extremely manual. So when you put those 3 products together, you've essentially fully automated your entire accounting and finance department. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second.
And Jeff, I just had a quick question. Do you support other ERPs other than Microsoft Dynamics? You just had Microsoft Dynamics
absolutely.
Up there. And I know that quite a few of the folks on the line are on Sage products, so I wondered if you could just maybe talk about that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Understood. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Let me go back here a little bit. I have a few examples of ERPs we've integrated with in the past. This is not by any means an all-inclusive list. I think we've integrated with and this includes different versions, somewhere over 100. So you can imagine we've seen Sage a number of times, different varieties of Sage. We've also seen different varieties of the Dynamics platform, different varieties of SAP. So yeah, we've definitely tied to a number of those. Really, if it's running on top of a traditional ODBC database or it has an open API that we can talk to, both Adaptive Insights and Blackline can automatically interface with both of those using native functionality built into both of those tools. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to clarify because we just had that Microsoft Dynamics there. So that's the same how it would work for any of those ERPs.
Absolutely, yeah. I just use that kind of as a filler, because yeah, it could be really any ERP system. I really can't count the number of ERPs I've seen, even completely ERPs you've never heard of. You know, turns out there's a specific ERP for RV dealerships, right? I had no idea, but they exist, and we've integrated stuff like that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to just explaining what Adaptive Insights is to give everyone a good picture. So just at a high level, Adaptive Insights is in a market what's called CPM, which stands for Corporate Performance Management. That's a market essentially defined by the Gartner Group, and they include companies in that group that sort of provide things like on a budgeting inside of the system, so the actual budget collection process and the analysis of said budgets. The forecasting as well, so continually reforecasting your data, and having Blackline create a solid set of actuals extremely quickly increases the speed of that process as well. One more reason why they work hand in hand with each other. Also, your reporting, your books, so delivering reports to the board, being able to generate those reports in Excel, PowerPoint, Word, or in a web-based format within just a few clicks is incredibly powerful. Think about how long that takes you every month. It's a substantial amount of time. And also with a variety of just modeling and what-if scenario functionality, also with more graphical reporting. So think of Adaptive Insights as kind of the end of a monthly process where you've managed your business, you've then used Blackline to close everything out, and now it's time to actually report on what you've done and plan for what you're going to do. That's where Adaptive comes into play. Adaptive is the largest cloud CPM provider on the market by a substantial portion, I think by like 3x. The reason why that's important is, and I always tell folks this, there are 3,750 customers, there are 3,750 unique models. So we have no expectation that every business is exactly the same, because they never are, even if they're the same industry. They're always different, which is why we create customized models for every customer out there. And our perspective on Adaptive, which we also like about Blackline, is both products operate off of a centralized database. There's no separate cube for report processing. There's no separate aggregation database that has a different set of data than data in the core system. Planning, reporting, all the consolidation functionality, they sit on top of the same database at all times, which means that when you are running a report at the end of the month, you can have confidence that what you're running is current. You're not having to batch process anything into some sort of reporting interface and come back in a day and run your reports. That would defeat the purpose entirely of having what will be considered centrally managed CPM tools as well. And we're going to talk about this with Blackline too. This will be brief, but our perspective on any sort of software, but especially software in the CPM market as well, is that if it is not easy to use and easy to understand, despite the fact that it may be incredibly powerful, nobody will use it. We've seen countless customers who have tried to use either Excel or some sort of tier 1 solution, like the SAPs of the world, and it sounds great, put it on everybody's desktop, and nobody can figure out how to use it. So you end up with shelfware, and that defeats the entire purpose of a purchase. Adaptive has, and so does Blackline, the highest user adoption of any similar tool on the market by a significant portion. And there's a variety of reasons behind that, something I encourage you to consider when you're looking at systems. About Blackline, and I'll spend a bit more time on this, and then I'm going to go ahead and jump into a very brief demonstration of both products as well. So let me start off with talking a little bit about Blackline. This fills in all the gaps really in your with your accounting group. Think about all the different reporting requirements you have. The monthly reconciliation process, which really should be a continual process. How do you automate that, right? Sounds impossible. It is not impossible. Blackline has developed some incredibly powerful algorithms that are common amongst many of their customers, and they've modified these algorithms over the course of probably, gosh, I think 11 years at this point. Think about the experience they have of all of those customers, both enterprise class customers and mid-market customers. Developing those algorithms has made it such that you can install Blackline within 2 weeks. It is a much quicker implementation than most products I've ever seen, including that of Adaptive's. And a 2-week implementation, and you're automating between 30 and 50% of your reconciliations on day one. It's an incredible ROI right out of the gate, which is one of the reasons we love it and our customers love it. And then also think about, some of you may be doing it, some of you may not be doing it, but we speak to customers all the time who are printing out books for their auditors and printing out all the different financials, literally printing them out, put them in a binder, and then paying someone to store them. And so over time, I mean, gosh, you could fill up an entire vault at the bank with all the different printouts, and it's expensive. Blackline eliminates all of the paper for those processes and makes it such that you can provide your auditors with a login to the system, and all the visibility is there. Audit times are shorter, and you're not dealing with the, in this day and age, kind of a silly printout process for all those different documents. So more to the point, and this is also similar with in the adaptive world, is where are people spending their time, right? So in modern times, you wouldn't expect folks to be doing so many manual processes, considering how much technology is in front of our face every day, right? You've got phones, you've got automated databases, you've got all these crazy APIs out there, and all these systems. Yet there is still a big portion of people in our profession that are stuck in kind of a copy and paste, what I consider a bit of a nightmare. That is unfortunately a norm in our business, both on the planning and budgeting side and the accounting side. So you just see here from this chart, only 17% is spent on decision support and 15% in management support. Those two should be the high bars. Transaction processing should be the low bar, right? If you want to really kind of grow into have a seat at the table and be someone participating in major decisions, if you're spending most of your time hacking together reports, it's very difficult to get at that table. And by automating those, it really puts finance and accounting in a much more powerful position in an organization to be able to influence policies due to the fact that they're able to generate reports and spend time providing real meaty analysis to those reports. That kind of value add to an organization is substantial and something that should definitely be considered. I'm willing to bet if we went around, I guess we're not in a room, but went around the phone and asked folks how much time are you spending on these functions, it's more than you'd like to admit. And but keep in mind, it's perfectly normal, and this is what we're here to talk about. So just a little bit about Blackline and how it's different from Adaptive. Like I said with Blackline, it's really focused more on your accounting teams. So it's everything from kind of your day-to-day reconciliation process, but also managing all the different associated tasks for a close. You're probably managing those on a spreadsheet today, where you're just tracking who did what, who sent what email, where that email is, calling Susan from business unit such and such to make sure that she's actually had a chance to complete the sheet, right? Not terribly scalable if you have more than just a few people working on it. It gets incredibly difficult to the point where it is that process that you dread at the end of the month, because and I've seen it a million times, the accounting team, they're till midnight trying to hack through the close. That is very unpleasant, and it can be a bit of a strain. Automating a lot of that stuff is really what they focus on here. So to get back to this, financial close management we've talked about. Intercompany hub, if you're trying to manage multiple different businesses, it's a great function for that. And all the associated controls. So think about visibility throughout an organization. How can we look through a bunch of spreadsheets and find an answer? Wouldn't it be easier to be able to go into one spot, see who touched what, see an complete audit trail, and being able to track down and address problems before they sneak through and end up poorly reconciled such that you're having to restate results. Very big function of Blackline as well. So if you look at the system as a whole, it's grabbing data from, gosh, a variety of systems. It could be grabbing data just from your general ledger, but like we work with a lot of credit unions, and it's doing a lot of reconciliation with the Federal Reserve clearing accounts, for example. That's one example. We've seen in medical environments trying to reconcile all the different items on a bill with the actual bill itself when they come through, or when they come through from insurance. There's a million ways you can use transaction matching. Very powerful feature from them. And so just if you look at the advantages as a whole, I've talked about a lot of these. My favorite on here, which maybe not everybody's favorite, but I think the paperless environment is a huge win. I was talking to a university customer, it was about 2 weeks ago, and they print out 10 books a quarter, store them in a vault at the university. It's crazy. You have to go through and cycle through a collection of books just to do the audit. It just doesn't seem, here in 2016, something that people should be doing, but it's common. That's a big part of it. And then just really looking at what Blackline provides from a best practice perspective. So all the different templates they can provide that have been pre-built, and then that allow you to also add to for your business is nice. So you're not starting from scratch. You're not trying to figure out how to configure your recs from scratch. It's a part of the process. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just suffice to say there are several auto certification rules. Think about these that you're doing in Excel. And there's a lot of these I'm sure you see here that you are doing manually. Blackline automates all of these out of the gate. And like I said, it can be set up within a 2-week time frame, which in the software world is unheard of, but it is possible. Transaction matching, I touched on that briefly, but there are countless scenarios where you are matching transactions in the Blackline world, in your day-to-day life. Blackline can be configured not just to reconcile accounts, but it can also be configured to match enormous transaction sets. And I believe it can match automatically over 1 million transactions in under 20 minutes. Think about how long it would take you to match 1 million transactions, right? Good luck with that. But with Blackline, 20 minutes, it can actually go through and match all those in that short a period of time. It's an incredible amount of processing power and algorithmic logic that has been built into the tool that saves you a lot of time. So just briefly on that, transaction matching works by pulling data from a variety of sources. It doesn't have to be, like I said, just your ERP. It could be lots of different things, and goes through a match and exception rule and spits out what it may not be able to match, but automatically will do any sort of JEs, provide you with an exception list. It's actually it's a UI that you go through to provide your exceptions. Very powerful feature, humongous time saver depending on what kind of industry you're in. Also the task management, which most folks do either in an Excel file, like who's done what, who owes me what, or they're just managing a bunch of emails going back and forth, which can be excruciating, especially when you come in on one of those days during financial close and you've got 300 emails of your inbox of different tasks that were completed, and you're trying to mark those off. That is a battle. Absolutely is a battle. You don't have to do that in Blackline. You can manage that and in Adaptive on a process management, task management interface. Same thing with journals. Think about all the different templates that are created automatically for you, and then you can actually add to those rules and also add to the workflow. So, Adrian, I'm not sure if you've got any questions that have come over from the from the audience there, but if not, I'm going to move on to a brief adaptive insights and Blackline demonstration, if that works.
Yeah, we'll just keep the questions collecting until the end, and we'll announce them for you. Let's just go ahead and get through the demonstration.
You got it. Okay, one moment. So, folks, I want to start off by going through Blackline, and we're going to demonstrate Blackline for probably about 10 minutes or so, very high level, and then we're going to jump into adaptive insights. I'm going to wrap it up about 10 minutes before the hour, and that should give us an opportunity to dig a little deeper on any of this functionality or talk about any unique requirements that you may have. These demonstration models that we have are pre-populated with data. The adaptive insights model is based off of a company that is essentially just selling products, right? They're not actually manufacturing the products. But we've got a ton of other models we can use. And the Blackline demonstration is actually role-based. And this is the Blackline demos are very deep. I recommend that if you do want a one-on-one demo and you really want to dig deep into this functionality, that is something that we can set up offline. But just to start, I've already logged in for the sake of time here today. And I've logged in as a system admin. But in the demonstration site, I can be whoever I want. So these are all the different roles that are in the system. Blackline and adaptive are both tightly regulated on security as to who can see what and who can do what, as you would expect from a system of this caliber. So there's a variety of different roles here in the system. I'm logged in as the super user, so I can do whatever I want. But if I want to see what the interface looks like for a preparer, for example, which would be kind of like a staff accountant or someone in your organization who is preparing the reconciliations, I can come here and see a dashboard of everything I have to do. In this case, I am well ahead of the curve, and I have completed all of my different transactions. And there's a variety of other different roles in here. You know, CFO is kind of a more high-level dashboard view as to what has been accomplished for today. So these interfaces, these introductory interfaces, can be customized for whatever role, whatever group, whoever needs to see what. They can be configured in that manner as well. So I'm going to go back actually to the system admin tab here real quick. Start back from there. So before we go into that, I just want to kind of explain the Blackline user interface. Everything, and you probably see this icon on your iPhone or your Android phone, but these icons are becoming extremely common. This really just means this is where you start navigating. All the different functionality, since I am a system administrator, is presented to me in this interface. I also have the ability to come over into this section, and if I had anything due, see them there. And I can also dig into what needs to be approved and what needs to be completed. So for example, this is a very busy person who has 1,000 tasks associated with them. You can see what journals have been completed, any sort of variances that need to be adjusted, maybe manually, that have not been caught by the system. And any sort of intercompany transactions that we want to track that have not been approved and completed, we can do that here. And again, this is something that you would use to accomplish a financial close. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of these prepare account assignments. And this gives me the ability to go look to all the different accounts, what the entity is, right? So if you have a very diverse organizational structure, your entity list can look however you want, and can be changed, a point I should make, can be changed by users inside of this interface. So you don't have to engage consultants to make a bunch of changes to all this content here. So you're able to go through, see who the preparer it is, how often these are going to take place, from where to where, and make any edits required. So I'm just going to jump into the edit screen to give you a good idea of what it looks like. So yeah, in this interface here, it's a matter of which team is associated with it. If it's associated with a project, for example, what profit center, which is kind of, it's your cost center where it falls in the organizational structure. What ledger it came from. We don't have to reconcile just one ledger. It comes from a variety of locations. It can also come from a variety of ERPs. So you may be working in an organization where there's been a lot of acquisitions. And so I've seen one, for example, where it was a distribution company who then bought a packing company who then subsequently bought the producer of one of the products that was packed. All three of those businesses would be considered manufacturing and the actual services and project management and distribution. Two very different businesses which ran on two very different ERPs. Those all three can be mapped into Blackline to reconcile all of those at once. Right? So this isn't just a system you buy. If you have one ERP tool, you can buy it for and use it for multiple ERP tools simultaneously. Adaptive works the same way, albeit a bit differently, but it works in a similar manner. Any associated notes, upload any associated documents related to the actual reconciliation, and you're also helping determine if I want to auto-certify any of these amounts, what is the rule associated with it, right? Very powerful feature. Training for Blackline for an end user is typically under a day to get comfortable. Once you go through one cycle, you're going to be more comfortable working in Blackline than you would have ever have been working inside of an Excel file. And let me actually jump over to the one of the last things I want to show you with Blackline. And like I said, I could go on and on about this, but we'll stick to a kind of a higher level demo here today. These are all the transactions that haven't been matched. These are the exceptions, and it's going to show these here on these screens. I can actually come into these different exceptions and then address them. Right. So here's the interface where I can actually say, okay, well, here's the exception. Where do I want it to go? Only exceptions that you're dealing with. And it's not like Excel where you're manually marking things. It's really just a matter of clicking in here, and hitting save. And then your account is officially matched. Pretty darn easy, especially when it's presented to you in a form like this where it's click here, hit save, call it a day. Instead of Excel where that can get messy very quickly trying to do that reconciliation. And lastly, I just kind of want to move on to insights, and I should actually just kind of hide this here. Insights is an aggregation. This is one of the power of a multi-tenant cloud solution, right? Nothing on the on-premise world could ever touch this. It's the ability for Blackline to aggregate typical times to close, reconciliation times, just the full cycle, the variety of, you can see it here, there's a variety of different statistics. So Blackline, on a macro level, is able to aggregate basic statistics about their user community, which is substantial. Right? The user community is I know Blackline is, I'm trying to think of the customer account, but it's definitely up there. So aggregating on a macro level, kind of all of that data, and then showing customers, hey, this is your industry, and this is how your team stacks up against other peers in your industry, and providing that benchmark data from a goal-setting perspective gives you something to shoot for. Right? If you have a good understanding of how other organizations take to complete these processes in Blackline, it's a great way to just kind of encourage additional best practices. And Blackline does have a lot of industry-specific webinars, local user groups, where if you do want to seek out someone from different organizations and see how they've done it, it's a great way to kind of build some networking there. Adrian, before I move on, I know this was very brief, but any questions on Blackline?
Not specifically Blackline. We have a few questions unrelated to either application. Well, they're related to the applications, but they're more interface-related questions. So, one question is,
I'm happy to take them now. Yeah.
Do you work with the QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Enterprise system?
Yes, I have 5 customers who have. Well, one of them has QuickBooks Enterprise, but they have 10 instances of it, so they've got 10 databases of it. And then I have other customers that are using QuickBooks Online. So yes, QuickBooks Online has a different way of connecting to it, which is fine, which is not difficult to do. And then QuickBooks Enterprise, for example, that's more of a centralized database, and we've connected to that one as well.
And does the cost vary between different interfaces, or is the cost relatively the same and can you ballpark the cost, or does it is that determined by the specific environment?
Yeah, it's definitely dictated by how the system was set up in the first place. So, for example, QuickBooks Enterprise could be online, not so much. Online's pretty standard, but the Enterprise platform can be customized to a certain extent by adding third-party add-ins to it, making, especially in older versions, making more customized adjustments to the interface, and that makes it such that there's no such thing as a standard integration process. But at the end of the day, you could have something set up in under a week to make an automated data pull. It's not the most difficult thing in the world. On the other hand, systems like SAP, those are typically, it's an implementation by Deloitte, and they have created custom code for everything under the sun. In which case, integration to platforms like that takes significantly longer. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it just takes longer to understand how all of the customizations have impacted it so the integration works properly.
And we do have a reseller-related question. Would you like to take that now, or do you want to hold off to the end?
No, I'll take it now. Let's do it.
Okay. This reseller is asking, how do you engage a reseller? Is it, do you pay them a commission, or do you actually engage them to do the implementation?
Oh, so that sounds like a question of a reseller found a client who wants to or has a need for one of these products, and how they would work with the GoPlan. Is that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds like what they're asking.
Yeah. We have arrangements like that with a lot of ERP vendors. So like I stated earlier, we do not sell an ERP product or implement an ERP product. We focus on what we consider 2 of the 3 tiers of a finance organization. So customers that have an ERP customer and want our assistance in a process to help a customer with evaluation, yes. In those cases, we provide a portion of the commission to that ERP reseller.
Do you engage them on implementation at all, or do you prefer to do the implementation since you're trained and certified? And
yeah, I suppose that's kind of a scenario depending on that vendor's expertise in the area. We just want to make sure that whoever does the implementation has the expertise necessary and the experience necessary to do it in order to make that client referenceable. That's our number 1 priority. Because as you know, in this business that we're all in, referrals are king. And if a customer has a negative experience on implementation, that's not good. So all of our customers are referenceable, and we intend to keep it that way. So it will be based kind of off of what that vendor's experience is, and we can evaluate it at the time.
Perfect. Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, folks, prepare yourself for the marathon 10-minute Adaptive Insights demo. So as in Blackline, you log in through a web browser. I'm using Firefox because I like Firefox. Some people like Chrome. Some people like, well, not a lot of people anymore, but some people like Internet Explorer. Microsoft has discontinued that product, but it still works. Some people like the Edge product. It's up to you. You can use this in Safari as well. I use it on my iPhone. I can use it on my iPad, right? It works on Safari. So does Blackline. Now, do you want to be doing an entire budget in an iPhone? Probably not, because you're going to go blind. But it's still possible to do. So I'm going to go ahead and log into this demonstration account here. And the first thing that's going to drop me on is what's called Adaptive Discovery. Adaptive Discovery is a visualization tool for all the data that is inside of Adaptive. So all the things you're going to see here today are managed, just like in Blackline, through a single username and password. So a single username and password is going to be associated with many roles. And all these reports are generated off of a central database. So should I go into a sheet or do some sort of modification outside of here and come back, it will refresh it instantaneously. I do not have to run a batch process. I do not have to wait for a couple days for the information to be synced. That concept does not exist. If I make changes inside of Adaptive, it is immediately reflected. Same thing if our integration tool pulls data out of Sage, for example, and drops that data into Adaptive. Instantaneously, there it is. Now I can start reporting. Same thing with Blackline. So the discovery interface is something that you can interact with, right? So I can click on one of these. I can see all the associated dimensions. I can drill down into those dimensions and see my gross margin by location, for example, in which case it's all coming from the United States. And it keeps my contextuality as to where I went. I can cycle through multiple tabs. I can also, and this works great on an iPad too, by the way, I can cycle through different time frames. I can cycle through different levels of the organizational hierarchy. I can click on a month and have an automatic refresh of my data. Incredibly powerful feature, and I would argue the most powerful visual intelligence tool that is native to any CPM platform in the world. And an incredibly powerful product. New releases coming out every 3 to 4 months. The heart of Adaptive is the sheets. So I'm going to jump into an expense sheet just to give you a flavor of what they look like. And this is going to drop me into Sales North. But before I go too deep into that, I want to explain 2 other things. Number one, there is this concept of different versions. Right? So here's your working budget. This is what I'm in now. I could jump over to a forecast, which is seeded by the budget. I could have a different version of the budget for different purposes. I could also have an unlimited amount of what-if scenarios that are driven off of whatever the primary version is today. So, I talk about this with customers. Sometimes they laugh, sometimes they don't. But when you're modeling a what-if scenario, you're modeling something that's either supposed to be really good or really bad, right? So you could be modeling a divestiture. You could be modeling a reduction in force. You could be modeling the addition of a company and the addition of a product and that cost over time and when it becomes break-even and profitable. There's lots of things you could do with a what-if scenario. I could talk about that all day. But suffice to say, you can create a what-if scenario with approximately three clicks from where I'm at right now. You also have an organizational hierarchy, which is also something that you build in Blackline. Again, another similarity. The beauty of it is if you do it once in Blackline, then you can just repurpose it for Adaptive and you don't have to think about it. So all the different companies are here with their percentage of ownership and all the different cost centers. If I am the manager of Sales North, I cannot see anything above me in the hierarchy. I can also be limited as to what else I can see. So here, for example, I can only access personnel plan for just my department. It could include salaries or not. It's up to you. Revenue analysis sheets, detailed planning sheets, and a departmental P&L in this example. So what I tell folks is, if you have a distributed budgeting process and you want to involve all the different owners of all these cost centers, and they're not finance or accounting trained, right? They've got a degree in fill in the blank. They're more of a functional user. They're engineer. We've had doctors. We've had teachers use this. The interface has to be exceedingly obvious and simple. Otherwise, they will get confused, go back to Excel. It has to be designed incredibly well. We spend a lot of time on that. And so I'm not sure if it's coming through on the GoToMeeting. Sometimes the colors aren't perfect. But on my screen, these cells are white. And what I tell folks is if it's white, you can write. Right? That's the simple thing that you need to tell these folks, and they can say, well, that's pretty darn easy. Okay, well, what's my training budget going to be for April? And they can simply type it in. Right? They could have also referenced this to the amount of new hires, right? And automatically generated a number. A good example of that. Telephone. Let's go to telephone. Telephone, and in Adaptive, we use formulas that are in English. So our full-time personnel timed the assumption sheet, which is what we assume is telephone cost per head. So we add people, we delete people. We always have an automatically edited and automatically adjusted telephone count, for example. I might want to do something like for other equipment rental, right? Maybe I want to come over to the FY 2015 sum, and I'm going to say we're probably going to spend $30,000 on equipment this year. I can hit enter, And then I can also look back on previous years, right? That's part of the power of the analysis functionality. Think about seasonality in your business. Are you in agriculture? I mean, heck, are you selling CPM software, right? Because when it's budgeting season, nobody wants to talk. Are you in auto sales in certain parts of the country where they don't sell as much during the winter? Same thing with housing. It could be anything. The system has the ability to look back on prior year actuals for that account, determine what the seasonality was, and apply it to your new top level number. So I can go ahead and hit OK. And you notice that it breaks it back by slightly different numbers. I can also go into any of these cells where it is pointing down and to the right. That is a formula, right? So I can adjust that formula, or I can dig a little bit deeper. I can also go into salary and wages, for example. Who are these people? Explore the cell. I get a pop-up. And, okay, well, what does this number represent? It's all these people. And this is what they're all contributing to that number. And then I can dig a little deeper and see what else is being contributed to these numbers. And it's all these different components contributing to that number. Very powerful. I can also do an audit trail, which Blackline also has, just as sophisticated. So I'm going to go ahead and change this number for sales training of $833 to $900. Okay, I'm going to save it. Once I hit save, it automatically gets sent to the database, and all aggregation takes place instantaneously for the entire system. So I can right-click here. I can explore the cell. And then I can say, well, what happened here? And there you go. The admin changed it from this to this. Pretty simple. The audit trail, this is just for a cell. The audit trail can go a lot deeper than that. And then if I want to jump all the way back and see all of my different changes, go back to total company. This is the same exact sheet that was down below. So it's one central source of maintenance, but it can be it's going to be automatically upgraded whenever I move through the hierarchy. Same thing with the P&L. There's different versions of the P&L for different organizations, all updated automatically. And last, and I'll spend just a short amount of time on this, there's so much other things to show, but I want to go into the reporting engine. And these are all pre-built reports. I'll show you one to start. So let's say you kind of want to see your variance between different versions, for example. We talked about versions a little bit earlier. Actuals is a version, so is a working budget. So we can drag versions next to each other, determine what the variance is for any account, traffic light it, and act on it. So let's see here. Telephone, what's going on with telephone? Click on that, and I can pivot on any of these axes instantaneously. I can also see notes, which I didn't show you how to do, and they appear automatically in a report, which is nice. Instead of having to track down notes on somebody's email or in a random cell somewhere, they flow through to the notes. So in summary, when I look at both of these tools, both of them are solving what I call the Excel problem, which is the Excel problem, aside from just productivity challenges, it is a recipe to have islands of information all over an organization with no visibility into all of them simultaneously. When you use systems like Adaptive and Blackline, the paradigm shifts rapidly, and you are then in a situation where all information from all these different functions under the office of the CFO are all centralized and can be reported on in seconds instead of somebody's 2-week project. We've got a lot of great references. If any of you are interested in talking to our customers, let us know. So Adrian, that was most of what I had, and I wanted to leave the last 10 minutes or so for more open-ended questions. If anybody wanted to see something in particular, talk about customer examples, or just kind of get our perspective on if it could work with their specific requirements, I'm happy to take those kind of questions.
We do have a few questions here. Is there an app for iPhone and or iPad for Adaptive? Thank you, Brian.
Yep, absolutely. Adaptive has an app specifically for this. You go to it. The app was designed for data consumption. Because our Adaptive's view on mobility is it makes sense to consume data on mobile devices and participate in workflow and things like that. But going into a sheet and typing into cells on an iPhone, not terribly useful. So yes, the iPhone app is primarily used for displaying graphical reports to whoever user has access. You can also just use the browser that is inside of Android, Windows Phone, or iPhone to get a view of Adaptive as a whole. So it works kind of as both ways.
And then could data be pulled from ADP Workforce Now?
Yep. ADP is a little interesting because I believe they do charge customers for access to their API, which is a little 2003, but I think they still do that. But either way, yeah, we have connected to the ADP API. We've also connected to Ultimate Software, which we're seeing a lot lately. I believe Ceridian, Workday, Great Plains Payroll. Trying to think of some other ones, but yes. And that question is an excellent. We get this question all the time on personnel planning sheets. How do I get this data into the system? And yes, it typically comes from either a payroll or an HR management system.
And what is the typical implementation process? How long does it take typically to implement this solution? Is it different for the different ERPs, like for the cloud solutions? Is it plug and play, like for Acumatica? How does that look?
Yeah, so for Blackline, the Blackline implementation process is radically quicker than Adaptive. Because there's so much pre-built reconciliation functionality in the tool. So that can take 2 weeks to a month. We've heard of them happening in less than a week. I don't recommend it, but it can be done. Adaptive implementations range from 6 weeks, I'd say 6 weeks, to maybe 8, more or less. And the reason why is the design process of designing a financial model from scratch takes longer than implementing something that has common predefined templates. Predefined templates work great in the Blackline world because reconciliations across different organizations have a lot of commonalities. What we find with Adaptive customers in the budgeting process is that while there are some commonalities across industries, there are fewer than you think, which is why the models get designed from the ground up.
And I'm not seeing any more questions. I just want to thank you so much, Jeff, for taking time out to show us these two solutions as they work together. It looks like a great combination. And thank you so much, audience, for spending an hour out of your time. We know that that's hard to come by, so we really appreciate you spending it with us. We did record this webinar, and it will be available at youtube.com/ERPVAR. That's youtube.com/ERPVAR. And I'm going to be sending all the contact information for Adaptive and for Blackline in a follow-up email along with that link to the recording at our YouTube channel. And Jeff, did you have anything further that you wanted to add?
No, I'll just kind of end it on it. If anybody does want a deeper dive, we do proof of concepts commonly for customers kind of later in the cycle that want to see information in their own, especially for Adaptive, in their own data, in their own words, essentially. We do those a lot. And we do one-on-one demos, both in person and over WebEx, and those can certainly go a lot deeper. So we are at your disposal. If you are interested, I'm sure Adrian's going to send that contact information out, and we'll be standing by for that.
And Jeff, will you be following up with the attendees and registrants for this webinar just to make sure all their questions were answered? Will you be giving them a follow-up phone call? Yeah,
absolutely. We'll do that. We'll also send a follow-up email with recordings to some demonstrations as well if they're interested in taking a look at something more specific. But I do recommend a one-on-one demonstration to be thorough and to really get a good grasp on both these tools.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody so much for spending time. It looks like we even have 3 minutes to spare. Alrighty, everybody. Well, enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.